Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Appreciate you joining me here for another week of the little podcast that we have going on here. Before I get into today's episode, please make sure that you're subscribed on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. You'll be able to find the podcast on all the major podcast platforms, and one of the ways that the podcast will continue to grow is by you taking that very small action and doing me a small favor of subscribing on that platform. The second thing you can do if you feel so inclined and you feel some value out of what it is that I am doing here is leave us a 5-star review. Again, that just helps. That's a no-cost way where you can continue to support the podcast and you can help the podcast continue to grow. You'll also be able to find video versions of the podcast that go up each week on a Wednesday on our YouTube channel. So just search the Unstoppable Dad Project on YouTube or jump on and follow us on the socials at the Unstoppable Dad on Instagram or the Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook. So this week is all about addition through subtraction. I almost messed up that line there. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to quitting a behavior or it comes to stopping something, you need to sometimes look at adding something else in place of that behavior in order to make it harder to go back to whatever it is you're trying to stop. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast today, albeit just a really quick reminder that sometimes you need to, if you're trying to drop something, you may need to replace it with something else, is that the last couple of weeks, given that we're now well into the new year. This will be towards the end of January by the time this episode is published. But the last couple of weeks' episodes have been just all about habit change, based around goal setting and certain things that you could start to implement, low-hanging fruit, really simple, effective things that you can implement into your life to hopefully have a positive impact on your overall health and well-being. And that's forced a few questions to come my way in regards to whether it be coaching clients who have reached out and just questioned something in their life that they maybe want to change and looking for some tactics around how to do that, or it just be from people in general who have reached out with certain things that they're looking to do. And the fact is, and I've gone over this over and over again, and everybody knows this, if you're looking to implement something new or you're looking to change a behavior, it's not easy. It is not an easy task, especially if that action, habit, and behavior is so deeply ingrained into your life. So if it's something like trying to give up alcohol, that is something that, if you're listening to this in Australia, from just the psyche of our country is just so deeply ingrained. So not only, and then from the point of view of even just as an individual, it can be something that people have done for decades, not just years, but decades of their life. So it's even deeply ingrained into them. We go out, when we catch up and we socialize with friends, like we have a drink, like that's kind of just part of our overall person. And look, for some people, you may not need to actually give up alcohol. And I've harped on about this, and if you listen to the podcast, you are probably getting sick of me saying it, feeling like I'm high horsing and I'm on a pedestal here, and I'm hoping not to come off that way. I'm just using this as an example. But if that's, say, a behavior that you are looking to drop, it can be so deeply ingrained that it's very hard. Like to change any behavior that is deeply ingrained in us, whether it is that, whatever the case might be, it can be very hard. So people have reached out and they've kind of asked, like, how would you go about this? And sometimes one of the simplest things you can do is to replace it with something else. I'll give you an example, and even something that you could look at. There are people that I work with who, they can binge quite heavily on food late night. So not only does that affect their overall goals for what they want to do from potentially a performance point of view or from a health point of view, it then affects their sleep. There are a lot of other byproducts of that. So they want to cut down on the late night snacking. And from the point of view of that, one of the things that we have tried with a lot of them is just replacing it with something simple like a cup of tea. with a little bit of honey in there or whatever the case might be, to kind of satisfy that urge, because we are swapping out one thing for the other. Now, obviously, there is still going to be a mental barrier there that they are going to have to overcome. There is going to be some level of willpower that they are going to have to draw upon in order to make that change. But replacing that late night snack with something as simple as doing that can tick the boxes for what they want to achieve long term, whether it be from the way they want to look. Maybe they're trying to drop a few kilos, which is perfectly fine. Maybe they know that it's affecting their sleep quality, like they're not actually getting to bed till midnight, and they want to start to get to bed a little bit earlier because that's affecting their mood in general. That's affecting their energy levels. They're not performing as well as they would with a better night's sleep or a couple of extra hours at work. And one of the things that they've identified, or we've identified by working together, is that late night snacking needs to come down in order for them to get a better quality of sleep. So a simple substitution for something that's maybe not going to have that same impact on their health can be a really simple action that they can take to do it. And as I said again, it is not just as simple as I'm going to do this and it's going to be easy and I'm going to go through and be able to step through this frictionless process. It's still going to be hard. You're still going to have to take action on it. But by replacing it, it does make it a little bit easier to do it. Back on the alcohol train, like something that you could potentially do is, instead of having, say, a 3 or a 4% beer that you have with dinner or when you go out to socialize, maybe it is swapping something for a 0 alcohol alternative. You can still partake in the festivities, you can still do that, but you are eliminating the ingestion of the alcohol, and as a result, not having to deal with the potential negative health impact that can cause on you immediately and then in the future as well. So sometimes it can be as simple as that. The other way that we can kind of subtract things and replace them with, let's say, for example, if we come at it from another angle, where it's like, I want to start doing something. So I want to start training in the morning. But I also know that at night, most nights, I'm having 2 or 3 beers at night as a bit of a wind down, and then I'm not getting to bed till later, so that if I was to get up earlier, I'm going to have to sacrifice sleep in order to get earlier. Well, we can kind of add by subtracting the other stuff. So by stopping a behavior, we can actually add another behavior. And while it's not an immediate swap, we're swapping it out for something else. So we start by looking at, hey, maybe don't have those 2 or 3 beers at night, and let's try to endeavor to get to bed a little bit earlier. So we are subtracting those behaviors the night before in order to add something the next morning. So then you're essentially shifting your sleep hours across into the previous day to make room in the next day. So you are adding stuff by subtracting other stuff. And then what can happen from a mental point of view is, not only can we hopefully start to see some results from adding that better behavior, where we're getting up, we're training, we're doing that 2 to 3 times a week, we start to see some results, we start to feel better, our energy level starts to increase, and we start to move things in a positive direction. All of a sudden, we have in our mind replaced the old behavior with the new behavior. And we start to become this new person. We start to become that person who does get up in the morning, who does do what we have set out to do. And then that can have a whole bunch of positive impacts on our mental health, on our self-worth, on just the way we feel in general. And by taking something out and adding something to replace it, it lessens the risk of us going back to that thing. It's, the whole idle hands thing. We don't, if we're not doing anything with it and we're just relying on our willpower to kind of stop doing it, while for some of us we might be tenacious enough to do it, what I've seen in my experience, both personally and as a coach, is that when someone is trying to stop something that has a pretty deep grip on them, whether they consciously know it or it's just subconsciously, if we don't go through the process of actively trying to replace that behavior with something else, at some point the willpower that they have is going to break. Like, they're going to revert back to that old behavior. And unfortunately, that's just the reality of it. I would think it's probably a very rare case where somebody doesn't revert back to the old behavior without replacing it with something else. And when we talk about replacing it with something else, that can be replaced in a positive light. That can be replaced in something that is going to help better us and help move us forward. And I think the other thing is too, if it is something that is so deeply ingrained in your day-to-day life, in your being, and it's something that has become like a very heavy part of what you do, you need to start off potentially, and we're backtracking this a little bit, but if in order to find something that you're going to replace it with, which is going to overrule those feelings to want to go back, we really have to sit down and understand what our values are, and then make sure that the goal that we're trying to achieve is aligned with our values. Because if it's not, and we're trying to kick something or we're trying to stop something that is really set into like our personality and our daily life, sometimes the new thing we're trying to implement cannot have enough of a reason why behind it that we're able to let go of that other thing. So if we're able to implement something new, something that is very important to us because it is aligned with the values that we have at that point in life. Now, I do, without going down this too much, and I think I'll do a separate episode on this, and I have over the years, but our values don't have to stay the same all the time. They are going to change as we grow, as we progress, and as we get older. And therefore, the things that we are trying to achieve in life are going to change. And as such, the daily actions, habits, and behaviors that we are going to have to undertake are going to need to change with it in order to achieve the goals that are going to align with our values. And if they don't, that's where the mental disconnect can come in, because we can be stuck in behaviors that aligned with what were once our values and were once our goals. But where we are in life right now, those behaviors no longer align with what we're doing. And I guess if I'm talking about certain things that I've stopped doing over the years recently, and I'm looking at it from that upper level point of view, that's probably why I've done it, because at one point that aligned with my values and what I wanted out of life, but it doesn't anymore. It's not serving my new set of values and where I want to go currently. And that's why that had to go. And in order for that to go and go effectively, because it had been such a big, heavy part of my life, I had to replace that with something else. And there was a transition period where it didn't just happen overnight. It wasn't just I was doing it, I was not doing it. I was doing it to I'm not doing it. There's certain things that it has been, and I think that certain things you need to be all in or all out. You can't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But for most of us, there needs to be a transition period as we're slowly starting to move this out of our life. But as we're slowly starting to move it out of our life, we're starting to slowly replace it with something else that is more important to us, that is more aligned with the current set of goals that we have and the current set of values that we have. So within all that, the first thing to do is, and I think from the questions that I've got and the conversations that I've had, most of us know there's a few things that we want to get out of our lives, we want to move on from. The next step I would do is start, and if you're not sure what you're going to replace it with, because as I said, there's some things that are that really simple switch, right? Late night snacks, maybe you replace it for a cup of tea or something like that. You know, alcohol, maybe you opt for the 0 alcohol option rather than the one with the 3 or 4%. Like, sometimes there's that simple switch that you can make. But even then, right, even if you make that simple switch, I think understanding why you want to do it, what's the goal behind it, and why is that goal important, and how does it feed into your overall current set of values that you've got. Because when you understand that, it makes the new action a lot easier to stick to, because you start to want to believe that you are this person who does this and who doesn't do that old behavior. And by stepping into that and doing that consistently, you then become that new person. And you are that new person rather than somebody who just wants to be this. So addition through subtraction, taking things out in order to start to improve things and move them in a new direction, I think is a very interesting topic. And it's obviously going to be very context specific, right? Like it's not, I've given you a few very simple examples of what you can do, but everything is going to be context specific, because no two people are going to have the same set of values, exact same set of values, and the exact same set of goals. You should have your own set of values and your own set of goals, and therefore the implementation of what you're going to do, the actions, habits, and behaviors are still going to be very unique to you. There's going to be some similarities from person to person, and obviously if you know someone who's successful that you want to emulate, then you can bring some of that stuff across, but there is going to be an element where you still need to work it out for yourself, and you need to understand how it's all going to fit into your life. So if you need some help implementing anything, obviously please reach out. You can book in a time for a free chat. There's a link in the show notes where you can jump on and you can schedule a time. Or just send me a message on the socials. Let me know what you think. Have you successfully transitioned from doing a habit that you wanted to get out of into something that you are now doing, where you have done it through replacement? You have replaced the old habit with something new and been successful with that. Let me know. Comment on the social media videos. Send me a message, because I'm very interested in maybe something really simple that you've done that I haven't covered off on the podcast, that maybe I could share on the socials, or I could share on the podcast on another episode that might be able to help somebody. So reach out, let me know. I'm always interested to hear from the listeners of the show, and I appreciate each and every single one of you. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.